They had trained it on language, right? But all of a sudden they're like, wow, like how did it learn how to do this? And
you guys want to see a neural network? Can I
share it? Yeah, share your.
How much of this is like really black box? Like we don't know what the computer's doing.
We can't just swing the golf club all the way around, but we should play golf with it. God does not give a spirit of fear. Let's not do something crazy with it. Let's not go off the deep end. But what better way to ensure the security of that array and that data that's getting fed into that AI than a blockchain?
Matt, you're cringing there.
I cringe anytime I see anybody tweet anything about what a crypto project should really be worth.
We're gonna do some magic.
Floodgates are open. We're just going to let this thing become conscious.
The stuff I've done, I've signed contracts with like disclosure, it's classified. I can't tell you.
We got educated on AI in this episode, just to kind of just lay it out there. I don't know what you guys' thoughts were on Evan. Evan Thacker was our guest, and he schooled us big time in a good way.
Very smart dude. Very smart dude.
Yeah, it's going to be an information-packed episode, so we're going to have to bring him back, I think, again sometime.
Yeah,
we barely scratched the surface of some things you can talk about.
We definitely got, I think, a good intro, though.
Yeah,
an intro.
Good intro to AI.
I think it's a great intro because we're actually going to have some more AI people coming on here in the near future. So it's going to be some interesting discussions about AI, and this kind of laid the groundwork about what we're talking about. So I think it was the perfect first AI guest to have on.
Absolutely. And if you would have told us probably when we started this podcast, I don't know if we would have necessarily expected AI to get such a center point, but it's become such a large component since we started that it's just continued to grow and it's going to continue to grow. So might as well learn more about it so that we can be more informed, considering that it's going to touch Web3 in different capacities. And that's what we aim to kind of look at with this podcast, is the different things that make it ebb and flow. So, but yeah, we'll get into that. In the meantime, though, looking at some of the news that happened this week, Matt, you have more ordinal stuff. So let's get started there.
Sure. Hey, I am kind of curious. This is geographical news and weather news. I know we were talking about meteorology a second ago. Have you guys, Brandon, have you seen any of this smoke like lingering from the Canadian
everywhere?
fire?
Yeah, no, it's been everywhere this
still
week.
Is?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
You have it by you, I'm assuming.
I have it right now. Yeah. And so I've been like trying to figure, because all of a sudden, like, yesterday or the day before, I went outside and I was like, it smells like something's burning and you can't see anything. And
so my brother's calling baseball for the Woodbat League in Muskegon, Michigan, and they canceled the game today. We're recording on Wednesday, June 28th for preface here, and so Midwest right now has it's been peppered with this weird haze and smoke. And so the air quality alerts have been all-time high. I take some supplements to help me because I'm allergic to that stuff really bad. So I've actually been taking stuff to help my lungs the past couple of months. I had no idea this was coming, and I'm kind of grateful that I started taking my mushroom supplements again to avoid that. But back to crypto news.
Sure. Back to crypto.
That is a concern. The environment is a concern.
Here,
but back to ordinals.
So ordinals, I can't remember if it happened in the last week or the week before. I feel like time simultaneously goes by very fast and very slowly. But they added this idea of recursion to ordinals. I don't think I've mentioned that in an episode before, but it's kind of a neat feature. And you could always do it because an ordinal is more or less just an arbitrary amount of data that you're assigning to a Satoshi. And so you could always have referenced one or another. But now they've standardized it. And so it's kind of cool. So people are talking about putting bigger files on the Bitcoin, on the blockchain, and, this 4 megabyte section references that 4 megabyte section references that 4 megabyte section. And so, I don't know, just cool to see. There's, talking of putting, someone had already put Doom, the original Doom. Everyone, that's the go-to. You have to run Doom on a new system. But talking about putting more games kind of just natively on there, just putting, code so that anything that is viewing the ordinals can just run the code. So interesting. Again, it's weird because they're putting everything they can on chain, but like everything is happening off chain, to view this thing, to use the amount of code to whatever else is, this recursion idea itself is really just a reference that is happening off chain. They're saying, oh, it says reference the other one, let's look that one up, but anyway, I don't know. I'm still following the ordinal space. Excited to see where that's headed.
No, it is interesting seeing where it's going and how it's evolving from what people were like, oh, this is a disease to Bitcoin, and now it's like, but there's still some there. So, yeah, I don't know, Connor, what were you seeing from that, or I don't know if you have any takes on it.
No, I hopped in the Twitter space earlier this week. I can't remember exactly when, but Udi was in it along with some other people, and of course, they're still having this topic, this conversation about, is this good for Bitcoin? Is this bad? And I don't know. I don't think it's ever really going to die. Like, it's this two sides just so ingrained in the culture that it seems like they're just going to be battling, forever, until maybe the chain forks. I've seen that being talked about too with some of these, Fidelity and BlackRock moving in to the space, and people are talking about, they're going to move in and then they're going to fork Bitcoin and, be controlling most of the hash power and be able to do it. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting.
About that.
Yeah, a fork would be interesting. It's interesting because it, like, ordinals itself as a protocol could die out. I think before, so ordinals is unique because of some of the upgrades they're able to, access the whole block space, or the whole block size. But like, apparently there's been previous attempts at, assigning value to, assigning data or value to individual coins. And those have, kind of died. Color coins is, I think, what they were called. You could, color a coin. But nobody does that anymore. Nobody talks about them anymore. Those just, they were old. And so there's a chance that we're in the hype of ordinals and it will die out. But I don't know. I mean, they're definitely,
a lot
more
ordinals
interest.
Might die out, but we're still going to have this conversation about whether or not we can build on Bitcoin.
Yep.
That's what I guess I'm getting at.
I gotcha. Yeah, definitely. That's never going to go away.
Another character in that conversation, Swan Bitcoin, Coy Lipstein. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's CEO of Swan Bitcoin. They were in the news this week because of their ties to Prime Trust, which is officially going under. They have a giant hole. So Prime Trust is a Bitcoin or crypto custodian. I don't know if they just do Bitcoin or if they do crypto as well, but I think they probably don't just do Bitcoin because they also had ties to SBF and FTX and Celsius. So they've kind of been a custodian for all of these players who've been running into trouble. So that's not a good sign. But supposedly Prime Trust was a true custodian. They just held Bitcoin. And the story goes that some people are saying they lost a key for a significant amount of their Bitcoin holdings. And that basically has just plunged them over. They've not been able to recover from it. But they haven't actually come out with that. And I was listening to somebody today who's kind of pointing out that they haven't officially made that the story, which would be an easy out for them to be, we basically lost the keys. So it does seem somewhat suspicious. They fired the CEO along with a bunch of other employees, I think, back in December. And actually FTX, we're talking about FTX paying off politicians and whatnot, making donations to different parties. That was all done through Prime Trust. So yes, it looks like there might be some shady business dealings there. But what's particularly problematic with Prime Trust is, like I said, they are truly a custodian. That's what their user agreement is. And so if there is any shady dealings, then it's not good for them. Um, and it's different because, like with Celsius and with these other exchanges, the regulators have actually said that because of just the way the user agreements are laid out, that you give your money to Celsius when you send your money to Celsius. So if you send your money even to Coinbase, you giving your money away basically to them. So if they lose that money, it's technically theirs. But it's different with Prime Trust because of that. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't look good. Swan Bitcoin held a lot with Prime Trust and Strike as well, along with a whole bunch of other people. So Swan supposedly has moved off and was no longer using Prime Trust as of the past month or so, along with Strike. So supposedly they don't have any ties to this failing. That being said, people are saying that because of the legal status of Prime Trust, they might be subject to clawbacks. And so some of the money that Swan Bitcoin holders have deposited in the Prime Trust may end up going back pending the outcome of, bankruptcy. So I don't know. We'll see. But the story doesn't look good.
That does not sound good. And that's just
and one other tie that I didn't quite figure out yet.
Right?
It does look like there's a stable coin involved as well. True USD. I don't know if you guys have heard anything about this.
I've heard of that one.
Okay. But
this is just frustrating, nauseating, all of the adjectives.
Yeah, it seems like they just cannot be. Why can't they just be a custodian in the space? Is the business model just not profitable? Like,
I don't think it must not be. Honestly, we keep running into these things.
Yeah.
How is it not though? Like, I could custody everything. Like, I'm going to write the keys, on a piece of paper and hide it in my bed. I don't need like technology. It's custody on the blockchain. Like, I don't need it like, a vault to store,
and just charge a small
bars of
fee
gold in there. Yeah, exactly.
Money.
Yeah. Hey, anybody here pay me $10? I'll hold your Bitcoin for you.
I will too, for the record. Just make sure just make sure we have all that data. Actually, no, I don't want to do that. Sorry.
I'm kidding, right? But like,
I never,
it is.
Yeah, I don't want to hold your Bitcoin for you because that just is messy. Not your keys, not your crypto, folks.
Sure.
No,
exactly. I wonder, like what else is going on in that system? Because like, it seems I don't know. I imagine technologically it seems like, or from an infrastructure standpoint, it seems really easy to do.
Very simple.
So I just like, that's the whole point is anybody can hold their own Bitcoin. But anyway,
speaking of more Bitcoin, interesting stuff that you kind of posted there, Connor, with ARK Innovation and their ETF. And it's interesting because they've probably been Cathy Wood and her stuff at ARK. They've actually been one of the first investment banking companies that were as pro crypto that I've seen, at least, talking about it in the space willingly, without feeling like they had to because it was trending. I don't know what your thoughts were on. I don't know what either of your thoughts are on Cathy Wood. She gets talked about a lot in finance, YouTube, and she's a big she's call it controversial. Honestly, like, I haven't seen ARK do anything that's like, oh my gosh, like I need to get a piece of this action. But I don't know what your positions are on some of this. It's just another investment bank getting into the the Bitcoin ETF space, but I think ARK has been the one that's been the most pro out of all of them, because they were there before BlackRock and all these other guys are coming in, and it's like ARK has been there the whole time.
Well, and I think it's not just that they're coming out with a new Bitcoin ETF, but they were actually one of the first to apply for a spot Bitcoin ETF.
Yeah.
So they've amended their application now to basically meet some of the same, level of standard that BlackRock was basically applying with. So it's an open question whether or not regulators are going to show favoritism to BlackRock just because of BlackRock, considering that now ARK is coming out with just as good of an application. They should, if it's the same, they should approve ARK because they're first. So we'll see.
Yeah. we shall see. So, Matt, any thoughts on that before we get into the episode?
I don't know, not much beyond what Connor said. I ARK in general, I think is neat, and I like the idea of, Cathy Wood kind of coming in to try to shake up the space, right? Like she's like, I'm going to create my own, ETFs and all that, and index funds, and I don't know. I don't think I'm invested in any of their stuff though. And it's it from what I've understood from just a purely investment perspective, they seem to be just heavy on technology. And so it's a, technology index fund. And, it's always the question, can you predict, can you do better? Can you outperform the market? Can you outperform the S&P 500? And sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. And so so not, I like what she's doing. I like what ARK Invest is doing, but research before you throw your money into anything.
Yep, absolutely. So let's get into the episode with Evan Thacker. This is a fun one. Hope you all enjoy. And we'll see you on the other side. Joining us on the podcast today, we have a very special guest, Mr. Evan Thacker. Mr. Evan Thacker is going to be talking to us about AI. He knows a lot more than we do collectively, being that he is in the process of finishing up an MIT program in the subject. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. I hope that we're going to learn a lot more about this stuff because we've talked about it. I feel like we've talked about it at a very surface level, guys. Our conversations haven't been terrible AI conversations. They've just been the run of the mill AI conversation. I feel like with a little bit of crypto sprinkled in. So, Evan, if you just want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what you do and what you've been doing working in the AI space and what the goal is to acquiring the knowledge that you did from the program you're attending. I'm very curious what this will build for you in the future, at least.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, I started my own consulting firm in 2020. Started using digital marketing and AI. Was one of the first to adopt really AI in that to do business predictions and basically turn companies out of almost bankruptcy in 2020, turn them around. And from there, just been using AI to help companies, help do all that. I started programming, I guess, 13, built my first website, ran a small consultancy and throughout high school. I come from about 4 generations of small business owners, from financial, energy, logistics background, and I just started piecing together the tech mid 2000s, and from there I decided I would go into aerospace, and that didn't work out because NASA shut down for the first time when it was my first year at college. That I ended up starting a digital magazine, and from there ended up kind of doing a lot in digital marketing / digital business, and been a long-time software developer.
That's interesting. And of course, you're a crypto aficionado like ourselves. How did that happen? I'm assuming that because you were kind of floating in those software development bubbles that it came up probably early days when you would have been doing that in 2013.
Yeah, so it came up, I think. Actually, I heard about it probably from some friends in 2009, of all things, 2009, 2010. Yep. I was kind of like, I don't know. And then 2013, I was still kind of like trying to figure it out. 2016 was when we kind of built out I was part of a hackathon. We built out a blockchain with actually JavaScript, and it was a voting mechanism with a blockchain, which was really big. Nice. And then you kind of realize maybe people don't necessarily want it, but it was really cool. And that was when I started to see some potential. It was like, okay, if you could vote with it, what else can you do with the blockchain? I actually ran a competition, uh, international startup competition, and was heading up for the state of Florida essentially and kind of recruiting and stuff. And so it came up in the conversations, of course, 2021, 2022. And I started really digging into Web3 and seeing where it progressed. And from there, I decided I'd take a class with Whiteboard Crypto. And then I ended up being an Alchemy blockchain scholar as well. And so got that cert. And yeah, it's very exciting what's happened, what I've seen transpire in the space, from just kind of just Bitcoin to all this stuff being built on it, right?
Yeah, and all the different chains and things. The evolution of the industry has been quite vast when you look at the history of it, from what started with Satoshi to Silk Road and kind of where we ended up in 2020, and everything was a dud, and then all of a sudden it in 2021 it just exploded, which is when we all kind of started getting our feet wet on the podcast here, was early to mid 2021. So just it's incredible when you go through the history component of it, and the people that were there early. It's ranged from envious to admiring for me, and so I'm just like, man, if only I knew what I knew now, and I knew it then. And but it's a live and learn thing, and something that you can't take for granted. When you hear something asinine and crazy, it's like, okay, maybe there's something there, and that's why, as crazy as AI sounds, there's something there that we need to harness and understand better as collective individuals, because it's going to be a part of the world we live in now, moving forward, whether we want it to or not. There's too much there, and they've been doing machine learning for a while now. Look at what Boston Dynamics is doing, and in companies like that with robotics, but never have we really tried to see what we could harness to the full potential. And now I feel like we've essentially cut all the tape or caution tape off of it, and we're just kind of letting it run rampant. So what's changed? What stigmas have been changed that the regular person has had, or the people that were in the space, and what's caused it to just be like, all right, floodgates are open. Everything and anything is fair game. Whoever's going to allow it, and we're just going to let this thing essentially become conscious.
Well, that's a really great question. Very loaded question. I think
I know. I'm sorry.
When you look at it, right? I don't think the floodgates were ever really closed per se.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's always a sense of, blockchain was around in 2009, 2010, and nobody was talking about it. Then you have these kind of people get really interested in one type, and they see all this cool stuff, and it gets published in media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the same statistics that we're using for AI is the same stuff. It goes back to the basis of the Babylonians and Egyptians and predicting crop yields.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the ideas have been around for a very long time. The thing that you start to see shift, I think, is the generative AI space, and then the computers actually being able to have the processing power to compute some things. I mean, we could go through it, but I mean, essentially what you're doing is, I'm going to water this down, but you're running calculus backwards and forwards like hundreds of times, which that's a really simplified version. And so to do that, you have to have quite a bit of computing power.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing. Thing that I've noticed is people already use what you would consider AI. So AI is an overbranching term, right? Artificial intelligence. Then you have machine learning, and then you have deep learning kind of in that pocket. You have unsupervised learning and supervised learning. Do you mind if I flush that out a little bit more?
Flush it out. Flush it out. That's what we're here for.
Okay. So unsupervised learning is stuff like dimension reduction and clustering. So whenever you see a bunch of points coming really close together, like let's say you want to figure out your perfect target market. You have all this big data out there, right? You want to find your perfect target market. You run it through a computer and you go, okay, what things are most similar on your target market? And it starts putting them into little bubbles. And you get down to 3 little bubbles, and then you've got 3 target markets. So you can take millions of different types of features on customer personas and flush it down. That's unsupervised. You get into supervised learning and you start to see things like multiple linear regression models, which is a lot of words there. Got to say that. But essentially, you're taking something like, you've probably seen it on trying to predict out your price. Where should your price be at? Okay, my price is right here, but where is the supply and demand curve, and how much can I hike that price? That's a linear regression. And you can get into multiple linear regressions. You can use a lot of variables. You have the algorithm, therefore it's supervised learning, and you have to have labeled data to do it. So you take the price, you take one variable, and you predict out the rest. You take the price essentially where it's just now, and from the supply, you're able to predict out where should I be. So pricing. Now, where we started to go is something called deep learning. And that's something you hear about. That's the black box. I can show you the black box. We could dive into that. I actually got a little magic trick that I used on my final presentation at MIT. Hopefully they didn't dock me points, which I think will make it really clear with the black box. This is where people get really afraid of the black box. It's not that scary. But essentially, what it is instead of having an algorithm that we would do, deep learning is you write some code and then you let the computer figure out what the algorithm is for you. But that algorithm is it's not exactly a black box, but it's hard to go back and pinpoint what algorithm they actually use to do that. That's where you start getting into your image recognition software, some of that stuff, all the cool stuff we're talking about. And then, if you want to go a little step beyond that, we could talk about it. You get into your recommendation engines. Recommendation engines are stuff like search engines, who you connect with on Facebook, your dating sites. Oh, you might like this person. Swipe left, swipe right. That's all recommendations. So we're already using this technology. The generative stuff has been really new. And it comes from something called GANs, which is Generative Adversarial Networks, which I just had to look up before this, so don't feel bad if you. But essentially, you have a computer that's trying to create things from a bunch of objects that you give it, and then it's trying to trick this other computer. I'm using that as a vague term on whether or not it was created by an AI or a human. And those have gotten better and better and better. And with ChatGPT, some of this other stuff, that's what we've been really talking about, is how good can a computer be at creating something from all these other things that we've seen?
I have so many questions, but I'm going to let Connor and Matt go. Yeah.
So yeah, one question that I was thinking about as you were talking is, and maybe we could talk about consciousness later. But so when you mentioned the black box, I think this is to kind of pinpoint it. In some sense, people, there's different groups of people, right? Some people say, oh, these things are conscious, this is incredible. I don't know how this computer works, right? And then other people who are like, no, I have kind of a vague idea of how statistics and computers work. So, they're just going through these models. But then when you talk about this black box, you're talking about the computer generating its own algorithm. And so this is kind of where you get into that gray area. Why? And, like they were surprised that I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was ChatGPT, and they were really surprised that it could do math, right? Because they had trained it on language, right? But all of a sudden they're like, wow, like how did it learn how to do this? And I think I looked at that and I thought I was in this camp where I thought they put the algorithm in and they said this is how you learn. But so this is interesting. Can you talk a little bit more just about this black box and how the computer generates its own algorithm? To me, this is wild. This is kind of new.
yeah, so I have I have here where I built a convolutional neural network. You guys want to see a neural network? Can I share
Share
the
it. Yeah.
screen?
Share your. You can share. You can present. Yep.
Okay, let me see if I can. Here we go. I got screen. Is that good? All right. I think maybe.
No, we're not seeing anything yet.
No. Okay, I'm just going to share a window, and then maybe it'll let me share screen.
There we go.
There it goes.
There we
You
go.
guys good?
Yep. Almost. Yep.
All right. So this was just, but you can see here. Here's what a neural network looks like. It's on TensorFlow. It's built with TensorFlow Keras, and it's on Google Colab. So this is what it looks like. I already ran it, but you can see here it's model building, right? So I'll walk you through really quick. Again, you're taking data, right? So you're taking these pictures that I've got that were in basically labeled sad, happy, surprised, etc. And you can kind of see here, dividing out the data. This is where it gets a little tricky, but essentially I'm turning it into red, green, blue. And what this neural network will do is it will go pixel by pixel and analyze the data, and it will invent an algorithm by going pixel by pixel, essentially. This is a 48 by 48 image that it's going to go through each of these, I think 15,000 images, something like that. And 3 stands for RGB, which is red, green, blue, which is how you get color. If it was grayscale, it'd be a 1 there. And then you're basically running these filters over top. You can think of these filters like Instagram filters. And basically it's going to go through and it's going to filter, and pixel by pixel, then it pulls all of that. I've got a dropout in here, which isn't bad. It's to stop overfitting. Just don't mind that for right now. You can ask me questions on overfitting, underfitting later. But essentially, it's just running these Instagram kind of filters over top and going pixel by pixel until it comes up with that. And you talk about parameters. There you go. That's 600,000 parameters I'm running on this really simple model. And you can get down and get even more. And so if you see here, when it actually, now that's the model, right? So I've got the model here. Now I'm going to call some other things. That's not super important, but then you get into what you call your learning rate. And basically we call it a learning rate. It's how it runs. And these epochs, okay, epochs are where it goes back and forth and it learns, right? And so here's the way I like to think of epochs. Can you guys see me on screen, by the way?
Yep.
All right. Great. So I like to think of epochs like, I'm sure you guys have played golf, or someone has, or you've gone to putt-putt, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to take out my putter. We're going to talk about golf for a second, because that's exactly what these epochs are like. So these epochs are essentially, I'm taking this model that it's got, and you can think of it like putting. So you guys have probably gone, if you've done putt-putt, done golf, you've probably done a practice hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you go and let's say you have to make a hole in one. That's what it's trying to do. It's trying to make a hole in one with this putter. On a hole, we're going to practice. So we're training the model to make a hole in one. And what we're going to do is we're going to swing this, and then we're going to measure the accuracy. Okay, how accurate was it on getting the ball in the hole? Then what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to one step after another and trace what the grade or the gradient was, the slope of the hole. And we're going to go back and we're going to try again. And we're going to improve our accuracy because we've gone step by step, measuring out the feet, measuring out the gradient to the hole. And then we're going to do that again. And so each one of these epochs, we're going and we're taking one swing at the hole, seeing how accurate we were. And then we're going back and we're tracing back the slope. And we're basically training the AI. In my sample, we're training this figurative metaphor, we're training it to hit the golf ball into the hole. Try to get it one stroke, see how you do. Measure back the slope. And we're doing that for 12 times here. But in this model, what we're doing is the golf ball, and that metaphor ends up being we're training it to recognize emotions and faces. And we're seeing how it does at recognizing happy, surprised, sad, angry, and human expressions. Yeah. So questions on that? I could go through more, but yeah. How we doing?
I want to know how you determine should pay analysis, and or like how I should determine what the value of my product is based on the data that it procures from respective markets, albeit spot market analysis, indexes, etc. Like how do I get that? I know you kind of mentioned that, like what from a price standpoint.
Okay,
that's something that I do a lot of analysis on.
So that's a different form of AI.
Sure.
Okay, this is deep learning.
Okay.
This is deep learning. So I can do
that.
Let's get
to that in a second, but
okay,
going back to this model.
This is the black box that everybody talks about. I'm showing you the black box right now. That's what's inside the black box.
You're giving it basic information so that it can analyze basically its success rate. Is this a lot different than recommendation algorithms? With the recommendation algorithm, it's giving you a suggestion, and then you're telling it yes or no, and it's learning what you want based on that information, right?
So there's different types of AIs. Each one of them work a little bit differently.
Okay, so
this is analyzing pictures. This is a convolutional neural network. This is analyzing pictures.
But in some way, it's still figuring out its success rate. Like it has to know, did the ball go into the hole? And then so if it's more successful, it's going to follow that line. And then if it's less successful, it's going to try, something else, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So
you're
this is training it.
You're giving it the basic information, and then it's developing the most appropriate algorithm based off of that information.
Right.
So it's almost like you're giving it an algorithm, and then it's developing a new algorithm based on the information you provided it, right?
You're giving it information, and you're stating some guidelines.
Right. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how much of this is like really black box, like we don't know what the computer's doing, and how much of this is like, well, I can logically understand how by trial and error it's coming up with this.
Yeah. So CNN filters. If I just look, I'll show you what these filters actually look like. Let me see if I can't find an image here. Hopefully that's... Yeah, so a lot of these filters, they look pretty much like this. Like you start dissecting, lack of a better word, you start dissecting faces in pixel by pixel, and that's how it determines, and it gets down into pixel by pixel format. And that's how that's how all this facial recognition, all this stuff starts breaking down. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I can see that.
But maybe pull that up a little bit better. But yeah, so it starts... Like I said, it's like Instagram filters. And that's what we're describing here is what each one of these filters would look like. The one that we're specifically doing is something like this filter. And so that's what, if I was to show what's actually happening here, that's what's actually happening there. And it's breaking it down line by line. And that's what's known as deep learning. So all this facial recognition, motion recognition, deep learning, that's what's happening with anything visual per se.
It's diving into the information in a way that like we just can't, like on a human scale, because it's too tedious for us, and it's like the amount of trial and error that would have to be accomplished for us to do the same thing. We're just going to do it, but
yeah,
like it's still understandable, right? It does scare me a little bit because like you hear like these smart people, like even Elon Musk, and like he goes on these podcasts, the Joe Rogan podcast, and he's like, we don't understand what's going on. Like we have to put the brakes on. We can't just go full, blow on AI.
Yeah.
But like, I want to say that it's still understandable to some extent. Like,
I think it really is, because at least you can understand, like, okay, this is 64 filters or whatever. And okay, we know that this is kind of what a filter looks like. Maybe I don't have a visual representation and exact code of what each one of these 64 filters looks like, but, and then we get down and we do another 32 filters and we have an idea of, okay, it's like a really bad social media filter, right? Like, I'm not sure I would want to take a picture and post this, but I understand what's happening.
So I have a question here. You mentioned the like 6,000 parameters or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that, and so again, trying to think of this black box thing, is that somehow like a sum or product of all the numbers you put in, or is this the computer said, when I look at this thing, I identified, 600,000 parameters to study? Like, is that the computer determined that number? I don't know. Well, like, where does that come from?
So if we look up here, right, I specify how many filters I want. I specify the activation function, all this, the shape of the image, all this other stuff. And then it comes up with that first one has 832 filters. It's doing the math for me, right? Then I wrote some other code here, and you can see the next one that I put, what was it? I put 32 filters on this. And then that came up with 8,000 parameters. And each one of these parameters is like a different feature that you're looking at, essentially. We kind of do it automatically, where we look and pick out someone's nose, we pick out someone's eyes, and then it's figuring that out. These are the different parameters or different features that it's learning from.
But this is the computer figured that out. It said, I'm looking at all these images and the filters, and you know what? I'm classifying all these as a nose parameter and an eyebrow parameter and things like that. Okay. So this is very interesting. So this is, I've seen, I remember reading a headline or two, about, some group using probably a similar algorithm to looking at certain physics equations and trying to figure out, like, hey, how many parameters are really there? Are there certain hidden parameters? Are there like what are we missing in our equations?
And when you hear someone brag about, oh, we did this with this many parameters, that many parameters, what they're really talking about is essentially how many features did we have to do to learn the model or learn what we intended. This one has 600,005, and 600,005 are trainable. If I go to like a different one here, I can see this is a different one that I set up because they have you build a lot of them. And we can see here, this one's 800,000. And I built one up to about 40 million, I think. Roughly 20.
But then again, this is the computer is saying when I look at all these things, I'm picking out, what I think is in a face is these 800,000 parameters, which again, like what kind of, I think kind of we're saying, the tediousness, right? Like humans would pick out, 10 different things and say, I'd look at the eyes and the nose and the mouth to figure out what the expression is. But
right.
Really interesting.
And that's where you kind of go like, okay, if it's a task that'd be really tedious to write all the different code to come up with these 800,000 parameters, it's better just to put it in a neural network and let the computer learn all the things that it needs to learn, as opposed to you writing a lot of code. Yeah. So that's where it comes to. And then, I mean, if we want to dissect it a little bit more after it gets through on the practice hole. If I'm back to you guys are good. If I'm back to my, I practiced, right? I've trained. I've gotten up to maybe 61% accurate, okay, on the practice hole. Or actually, 61%. It's not great. This was not the only models I built, but this is not great. And then I really want to test out my new capabilities. I've only been playing on the practice hole. Now I really want to test out my new abilities. That's where we use some validation data here. And so you can see here, my training accuracy was actually about 60%. But then when I went and played on the golf course, I got up to 65%. And what we're really trying to do in building out these models, when you hear the model building, is we're trying to build out a model that generalizes to most situations. And that's really all of AI. Does that make sense?
Yeah. On that note, the general aspect, just your personal opinion, when you look at the future, do you see? I know sorry, rambling with this question. Currently, I feel like people are leaning on these general applications, right? ChatGPT can do a lot of things, right? Whatever, Bard, any of these large language models can do a lot of stuff. Do you see maybe one or several general ones being in the future, or are we going to start splintering and everyone's going to have a personalized one, or each field is going to have a personalized one to say, hey, this is really good at that and that and that? I don't know, what your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a very great question. You mind if I minimize the stuff and talk with you guys?
Sure. Yep. No, you can. Yeah, you can stop sharing anytime.
I can get out of here, baby. There we go. Okay, multi-screen. All right. So that is a fantastic question. My mentor from Apple, I think, probably had it about right when he said generalized AI models they require just way too much computing power and too many resources to have everybody have their own. So I think it's more going to be having it open sourced. It's kind of like building an operating system right now. I mean, yes, it's better to have them open sourced or have a big company do it, because the amount that it requires to do something like ChatGPT is immense, or Google Bard or any of those. So I broke that down with filters, right? And that was images. That's kind of, the CNNs are cool, but their image recognition's they're known as like an older technology, like 2016. Oh, that's so 2016, 2018. Okay, whatever. It's considered old in this technology field. But anyway, the new models use something called transformers. And what transformers will do is essentially, you saw how I broke down a picture by parts. Now do that with human language, word by word. And that's what the transformers do. And they do it very well. And so you're matching different words in different contexts. And that's why they do so well, is because they're breaking down an entire language, just like I did with the filters, but they're doing it for a language. It's a little bit harder to demonstrate because it's kind of hard to do the matchup, and we could do, filters, and we're familiar with filters, but yeah, think about that with language, and that's kind of your ChatGPT models. And then instead of 600,000 parameters, you're talking hundreds of millions, I think, or a lot more. I'm forgetting what the last one is. It's a lot. It's way more. It's way more than I could even process. So,
yeah. Talk about the black box, to go back to that. But so I kind of want to prepare, because in a few weeks we're actually going to host another AI guy who developed this program he calls Pulpit AI, which is basically designed to help pastors or small ministry leaders. Basically, the way he describes it is so they develop a sermon, they write a sermon that they preach on Sunday, and then they're going to feed it to this AI, and it's going to produce weekly content for them based off of that, like blog posts, podcast scripts, things like that. Sounds pretty simple enough, but when it got announced, there was quite a big backlash, for it on Twitter, because of course nobody wants an AI sermon. That Christians would just never accept that. Most people wouldn't accept. I mean, most people are scared about AI in a lot of applications. But so I want to be able to tell people AI can be useful as a tool. Something like this. Yeah, a human writes a sermon, and then they're going to they're going to develop that into, writing prompts and, other resources out of that using an AI. That could be a very helpful tool. And I just want to tell people that like we can understand what the machine is doing, and we're using it as a tool. So it does get a little scary when we come up with this black box idea. And I'm just curious kind of what your thoughts are there. Like you said, I mean, you did clarify, like, yeah, we can't understand what it's doing, but we do have very smart people, even like I mentioned, Elon Musk, that have concerns about AI's implementation in certain aspects of life. Is there anything that concerns you in all of your research with AI, about where we're going? Are you just totally positive about it? Like, what's your general thoughts there?
It's a great question. I think all technology is a tool. Again, I would even classify it as a putter.
Yeah.
And depending on what I do with this putter, it could be good or bad. I could go for a game of golf, or I don't know, I could swing this around and who knows what'll happen. I think we can't just swing the golf club all the way around and go, but we should play golf with it. We should think about what we're doing and be reasonable, be sensible, be thoughtful. I'm
You don't
not.
think we should ban all putters? No.
I'm not really for banning all putters. I'm just throwing that one out there. But maybe some people are. I mean, everybody's live in the U.S. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But I think we should just play golf. We should figure out what golf is. We should play that. That said, I mean, I'm a Christian, so it always comes to mind that, and I know a lot of people talking about this stuff sometimes aren't. I always go with God does not give a spirit of fear.
Yep.
And it always goes, but of love, of sound mind. Okay, well, we should be of sound mind of what we do with the putter. Let's be sound minded. Let's play a good game of golf. Let's not do something crazy with it. Like, let's not go off the deep end, ban all putters, but let's make sure that putters are used appropriately.
Yep. Temperance with everything. Not that. I mean, I'm not gonna say not that hard. It's difficult, because we want to put those things. We want to maybe take them to the nth degree, but sometimes it's like you said, like, is that really the game of golf we want to play, or do we want to play this game of golf that's actually fun and can benefit everybody at multiple levels? And that's why, to go back, like, the one thing that really intrigues me, and I guess this is kind of my supply chain background, is how this can help determine the different should pay analyses and value of products based on their respective markets. How does that kind of play into it? Because this can also like get into what even like a crypto project is worth to a certain extent, based on the value that it brings to the market. So I don't know, Matt, you're cringing there, but it even with that, there's supply and demand that components that factor into it sometimes.
I cringe anytime I see anybody tweet anything about what a crypto project should really be worth. Anyway,
but we need more filters on that, because so much of it is marketing and it's frustrating. It's like, oh my god, da da da. It's like, how much money can you put into marketing determines the value of your product versus the actual value of what you're bringing to the space itself. That's the parts that frustrate me.
Yeah.
So the question was figuring out what something's should be priced at. Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, just the value of things based on their respective markets and supply and demand accordingly.
Okay.
I know it's not. I know it might be loaded, but I figure you brought it up initially, so I'm like, I want to at least pick your brain, because that's how a lot of people will evaluate some of this.
Well, to tag on to what Brandon's asking, I think I'm just kind of curious, because you were early on the AI train, like you said, with this consulting business. You were using it basically to help businesses figure out not just their pricing, but maybe it sounded like the target market as well. I mean, how are you using AI in that business particularly?
Okay, I'll talk about how I'm using it. I'm not a financial professional. I do come from a financial background, but I'm not going to give financial advice.
Disclaimer:
Okay,
this podcast,
if
this
that's all
podcast
fair.
doesn't give financial advice anyway. So,
Okay,
yep.
okay. Thank goodness. Okay, so I'll start with how I was using it and what some of the things I've been able to do with it as far as marketing goes, and can get more into finance and supply chains. Um, One of the ways I started using it was you can take, I'm sure you're familiar with user tests, right? For websites, etc. Well, you can run eye tracking with this little camera up here, right? And see which
Mm-hmm.
way. So they ran billions of different eye tracks across different marketing materials. And then I'm able to upload marketing materials to it and websites and figure out where an eye will go before the website's even live, before I do user testing, saving the client thousands or
Yeah.
whatever price it would be to get people to come in and test the website. And we can tell where the eye would go across all their different marketing materials. Been using that for 3-4 years. I know it sounds really out there, but it works very well because if you can figure out where their attention is, then you can figure out what they're going to click on.
Yep.
You can
Yep.
figure out whether
I'll
or not
say
they're buy. Yeah. So
click
that,
generation. Yep. Mm-hmm.
yep. Another way I was been using it for a while is figuring out the copy. Now, ChatGPT is good. It comes out with some generative copy, but there's some other out there that they use billions of data points on target market, and you can figure out which target market your copy is going to be. So are they 55-year-old men, and okay, this copy would speak better to them, or if they're 30-year-old women, this copy would speak to them, and rewrite it based and have the generative AI rewrite it based on that. And so I've been using those kind of tools in marketing for probably 3 or 4 years, and it's worked very effectively. I'm currently going for funding, and I've been using it because I wrote my own algorithms, but coming up with marketing budgets across a bunch of different channels. I don't want to give it away. I don't really want to tell.
Yep.
But I'm trying to see if I can't get a patent on some of it and get some cash. But essentially, okay, which marketing channels are best for a client in a specific industry? What's the approximate budget to get this amount of sales? From this amount of sales, I can calculate out how much they're going to make, and I can figure out what their approximate predictive return on ad spend would be, and predictive ROIs would be, all that stuff before we even run a campaign. So I built that myself and been running it for clients for several years. And right now I'm actually applying to an accelerator and a couple other things, seeing if they'll get me some backing. And well, instead of just running it for clients, I plan on launching the software, hopefully, maybe within this next year.
Awesome. And the AI stuff that you're acquiring through MIT is just kind of, gasoline to help move that into the, bigger and better directions, right?
Yeah. And as for like figuring out the price, which I talked about supervised learning, there's algorithms out there for that. As far as, and it's really, you got to dig deep into your economics. Got a couple of economics textbooks I've dug into. You can look at your supply and demand elasticity. Those algorithms have been around for a while, and you can start to kind of get an idea of where that's going. I'm giving you, I don't want to show too much, but I do. Yeah. I'll give you enough there so you can.
No, for sure. No, and I get it. It's just interesting how certain products in certain markets can just be, the market ebbs and flows by the drivers of the market itself, as opposed to an actual algorithm or the way economic conditions are. And it's just like, it's kind of nauseating sometimes, because it's like, can you give me some data to back it up? And really what it comes down to is, we had really smart pricing people, or we're paying a firm who can, help us determine what our product's market value is to the respective customer that's going to demand that product in these respective sectors, and that's how we determine the cost. And it's like, man, like, can you give me anything, like what the components of what you're making driving cost or what? And it's like, it's a whole slew of factors, and you're never going to pinpoint it exactly on one cost impact driver, but it can be multiple variables.
Yeah, well, and the reason I'm not giving you anything concrete is because everything that I've done within the last couple of years, like the thing I just showed you was my MIT project. It's not a huge deal.
No.
Okay. But the stuff I've done, I've signed contracts with it. It's like not disclosure. It's classified. I can't tell you exactly how the stuff's made. That's why I'm not showing you right now. I'm sorry.
Nope. I respect that. It's just, it's the stuff that I think about on a regular basis, because it's what drives the economy, and it forces people to make the decisions that they have to make. And those are the things that kind of tick my clock, so to speak.
Yeah. And I mean, it'd be great. I'm looking forward to the day that hopefully a lot more of these kind of algorithms are hopefully a little bit more in the hands of, I guess, medium, small business owners kind of thing, or et cetera, and hopefully putting those more out there. So
definitely.
Till that time comes.
No, you got to pay the bills. I 100% understand.
So I'm kind of curious. We don't have a lot of time left, but we are a crypto podcast, so we try to be. AI technology is super interesting, but I know I've talked with you a little bit about this, but you have some ideas about how blockchain, AI, even augmented reality, these types of things, you kind of envision them maybe merging in the future. And it's kind of a curious question for me, because I've seen AI and blockchain as kind of opposed to each other, at least in the sense that blockchains tend to be slow, more careful, more about security than about necessarily speed of data, which AI needs like a lot of information and needs it fast. So it seems like the technologies, even though you see all these like AI crypto coins, which are basically all scams, it seems like the technologies really don't work together too well. But we're talking about like Web3 and this idea that the internet's going to evolve into something new. I know a few years back, Internet of Things was kind of like this big idea, and now it seems to be more crypto blockchain driven. But now we have AI coming into the mix as well as augmented reality. I'm just curious, what are your ideas there about how these technologies might merge in the future? Like, what are we seeing? Where's all this going?
Yeah, that's a great question. All right, maybe let's have a little bit of fun. Well, we've been having fun, but let's have more fun. Okay, I got my black box here. It's a red box, but give me some credit. I've got my image, right? To answer your question, this is my little image. We're going to do some magic. I'll put it in my black box.
Let's go.
And you saw those numbers at the beginning? Well, I'm going to pull out this thing called a tensor. It's just this giant row of numbers. Okay, so all that RGB, all those numbers. I got all these numbers. I've dissected my image now. All these numbers, they're in a tensor, otherwise known as array. Okay, I'm done with this array. Let's put this array back in the box. I rub my hands, and then I get my emotions. Okay, I'm angry. I'm sad. Happy. Excited. I'm mad. Okay, we get the point.
Yep.
So essentially, I have to use numbers because computers understand numbers. Those numbers need to be protected. We've seen, and even in the language of JavaScript, we've seen the constant kind of come about. We've seen arrays of numbers come about in programming and maintaining the data and maintaining the array of numbers. Every AI is going to have an array of numbers. What better way to ensure the security of that array and that data that's getting fed into that AI than a blockchain. Just throw that one out there because it's immutable. You're tracking back the transaction history. You have a receipt on every time that it's changed via your transaction history. So you're protecting that data. And all this stuff we've seen come about on what data is being used to train these AIs, where is it coming from? Is it bad data? Is it good data? You can track all that back with blockchain, right? So, I mean, ideally, and because it's an array of numbers, I mean, yeah, that just makes sense to me. When it comes to something, and I haven't taken my quantum course yet, but when it comes to something like quantum, I've definitely looked into it, the D-Wave systems on AWS. It's pretty cool. And essentially, when I'm talking about putting, right, I want you to imagine instead of, I was talking about putting. And putting is kind of a cool thing, and it's a cool field. I'm looking for what an actual putting map looks like here, what an actual green looks like. So if I grab actual putting map, there was one made by MIT. It's not a straight putting map. Like, you think about a green like that, and you think, oh, it's going to be the slope and everything else. When you're actually calculating it out, it's multiple hills, multiple valleys. It looks more like the slope of that green looks more like the Himalayas. And that's kind of where you start to see, like, okay, I want to find the lowest point of the Himalayas. Hybrid quantum computing seems to kind of perform better on optimization problems like that. And you can start to optimize. So blockchain can protect your data to feed it into AI. Hybrid quantum computing can sometimes optimize and find you the lowest point of the green when it looks like the Himalayas, essentially. And we've looked into stuff like that. As far as AR, VR, extended reality, I've programmed some of that. Used Unity, which you guys have seen the new Apple Vision Pro. They're teaming up with Unity. It's a game development engine. I actually wrote my own augmented reality business card. I think it's on my Instagram somewhere. But essentially, back in 2016, when it was just first coming out, it was still really hard to do. Now it's gotten a lot easier. There's something else called 3JS and Mozilla Hubs. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it uses 3JS. And basically, you can start embedding 3D models and putting stuff in there and make websites fully interactive, one page. I saw it actually at the Google conference there. They're doing it with Flutter, but you can also do it with JavaScript and React. And it's basically like one page, but it's kind of like a video game, but it's kind of not. It's all an interactive one pager, which is very cool. And it's all 3D. It's fully immersive. Another thing that I've seen, I was in Miami. I saw they're doing now, don't know if you guys have seen it, but movie screens where they project. They have 6 projectors. They project on both sides of you. So I watched the Fast and the Furious, and the cars whiz by you on both sides.
Wow.
It is a lot to take in. I was not prepared for it, but it is amazing. If you want like to be thrilled, feel like you're in the middle of the car seat. So you start talking about AR, VR, extended reality, okay, fully immersive movie theaters. And then you start seeing stuff like digital twins, right? Where you can basically monitor your whole supply chains. And then you could run predictive models on it and totally change out all of your business processes. Stuff like hospitals, for example. Maybe you don't want to A/B test something. Maybe you want to A/B test something in a virtual environment with AI and some extended reality. And then if that process seems to work out and help, then you put it into production because people's lives are on the line. You don't want to change a process or procedure until you know it works. And something like extended reality can help us experience that business process before we put it into practice. So I kind of just ran through ran the gambit there. I don't know.
It was that was a really good answer, and you gave quality answers to all our questions, which we appreciate, and hopefully we can have you back on for further discussion, because I think we just scratched the surface in terms of where these conversations can be going down the wormholes, respectively speaking. I don't know, Connor, Matt, do you have any more questions? I feel like we do, but we'd have another episode, basically.
When are we gonna start making 3-hour episodes? This will
okay, Joe Rogan.
We're gonna have to do the Joe Rogan.
This
exactly.
Joe Rogan podcast. Not we wish, but anyway, Evan, thanks so much for joining us. Do you have a social media presence that people can follow, or you tell me where people can find whatever you're working on, or where you just spew your opinions?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, really anything. I'm going to try to get my YouTube channel back up. I just produced my first film. I don't know if Connor mentioned it. It just went live. So I'm also actually, I guess, a certified movie producer now too. So of all things.
Gosh, true Renaissance man.
Yeah, right.
Of the 21st century. Yeah.
I got an IMDb, so you can follow me there for my latest films, and just hit me up. I'm on Slack. I'm on Discord. I think it's Evan Ross on both of those, and I think it's Evan Thacker on most of my socials. So yeah,
we'll connect, and any links you want us to put in the description, we'll throw.
Yeah, well, we'll do that. That way, you don't get followers from all angles. But it's not like our audience is banging down the doors right now. So, but hey, regardless of that, Evan, we appreciate it, and we look forward to having any future conversations that we have. And this has been the Crypto Conversion Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for watching, listening. Please continue, subscribe, review, download, unsubscribe, resubscribe, wherever podcasts are. Peace.